It's day 5, it's August 19th. We're at Canada's Outdoor Farm Show. We're doing the 2016 Great Ontario Yield Tour. We're here with Moe, Curly, and Larry, the marketing man, Wheat Pete, and the corn guru. Why are we here? Well, you know, we've been traveling across southwestern Ontario. We're into Huron, Dufferin County, kind of the central part of Ontario, and we're seeing a lot of guys complaining about dry weather. Some areas have been getting some moisture, so there's a lot of haves and have-nots, a lot of variability. So guys, quite a big question I have for you guys: did we give the crops a good enough start to withstand some of the stress that it's getting this year?
Yeah. So I think that's a really awesome question, Mo. And every area is a little bit different, but one of the things that we've really sort of not focused in on quite as much as maybe we should have over the last few years is this whole concept of seed bed. And I have a great neighbor, he's a super farmer, and he always talks about cuddling the seed. Just get that soil nice and fine and cuddling the seed. And man, if you worked land a day too early this year, if it was too wet and you smeared it and that trench maybe got a little smeared, right, that corn is ugly. So in those situations, absolutely we didn't do that job.
Yeah, that fineness of the seed bed, we maybe haven't paid quite enough attention to how to make that seed bed fine enough, cuddle the seed, and you know, give it that start that seems to pay so much dividend down the road, especially in a dry year.
Yep, and so when you think about that, we go to strip till. We've talked lots about strip till, and so we've got a big focus on that because we're trying to have less soil erosion and still end up with maximum crop production. Man, some of those strip till trials on soil like this is beautiful dirt, and yet we fall strip tilled. We came in, we planted into that, and we don't have good corn the way we think we should have good corn. So again, we didn't do enough in the spring to get that seed bed where it needed to be. So one of those things that I think we just have to get back to the basics on it and try to go through that thought process and say, can we do better from that standpoint?
Right.
However, to be fair, for the guys that planted maybe a day early and didn't get the seed cuddled like you'd like it to, they didn't know that they were going to get 22 straight days of no rain, and that seed bed kept getting a little stiffer, a little harder. Didn't get a weekend rain, soften it up, let those fractures happen. Just kept setting harder and harder. So, you know, to beat ourselves up because we planted a day early this year, you know, if you had a weekend rain on May 20th, you might have said, dang, we're the best farmers around.
Yeah, absolutely. You plant wet, you need more moisture. The other thing I think that we need to look at from that perspective is how important that rotation is. So boy, where we planted corn on corn, where it wasn't sand soil, that really you can get away with that, where the, you know, the wheat in the rotation, I know I'm a wheat guy, I push that all the time, but on those farms that are clay loam and heavier, the corn on corn this year just getting crucified. And again, that's not necessarily that we did anything wrong, other than we needed the inherent structure, that good soil quality, in order to get the crop that we would really hope to have, or more rainfall. Had it rained more, those fields probably be okay.
Now, in fact, we met some farmers along the tour that had to replant some beans down in that Essex Stony Point. And in fact, those beans, because of the heat and less moisture, it wasn't as wet, they planted June 7th, and they look even better than ones that were planted earlier.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes you get lucky, right? And planting conditions, we always struggle planting timeliness versus planting conditions, and that's a battle that we wage every year in trying to make that decision. You know, do I plant today, or do I give it one more day to make it a little more fit, right?
Yep, and it all comes to size of the operation as well. So if I only have 1 day's worth of planting, I can wait for the perfect day. Man, if I've got 10 days or 2 weeks to get the job done, I almost am forced into pushing that day or two earlier. And yeah, sometimes, particularly with soys, sometimes you can plant them late, and the Mother Nature has smiled since then. They could be amazing beans, and hopefully they are for those guys, because, you know, I think their corn maybe doesn't look so good down there necessarily.
So in your travels, have we seen planter modifications, attachments? You talked about strip till. Is there anything out there that we say, dang, that really helped us get a seed bed that did a nicer job?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I do think that there's some of the new trash whippers, the residue managers, whatever. I know you're big on the floating residue managers. If I'm trying to leave that residue on the surface, I think that's a really good innovation. Other than that, I do think that as we get into these marginal soil conditions, some of this hydraulic down pressure, the downforce, even though we can't show yield benefit, that starts to play a little bit. If I can pull that tension off when I'm going through those wet spots, it just inherently, it makes me think that's gotta be better, even if we don't see that. I do like, in those tougher conditions, some of the finger closing wheels as opposed to just the standard rubber closing wheels. If you gotta go to cast closing wheels, it's just too tough entirely. So lots of guys playing with that as well. I don't know, Greg, you're the equipment expert. What do you see that you like?
Yeah, the problem with the closing wheels is it's tough to find one that gives you the perfect close across all your conditions. And who's going to carry a truckload of closing wheels around when yeah, okay, other than me. When you're in no-till, you'll have a really aggressive spading closing wheel, and then when you go into conventional tillage, you want to go back to pure rubber. Trying to find that compromise. I think there are some good options out there that give you a bit of compromise, but it's not a complete fix at both ends of the scale.
Yeah, no, and it's funny, because I'm a no-till guy, and you would say no-till, I need more than just the rubber closing wheels, but boy, if you get the soil at the right moisture, I've had great luck with my rubber closing wheels just because I'm a small farmer, by being able to be at that field at the right time, so then I don't have to do those other things.
Yeah, right on.
My last question for both of you is, we had an early wet, cold spring. It wasn't ideal. Did we do a lot of compaction? Is compaction doing some damage to yield here?
Yeah, so let me start off by saying that wet, cold spring, and that's bad? Are you nuts? It's perfect for wheat. We had amazing wheat.
We're talking about real crops today, right?
Yeah, wheat, exactly. No, so I think, Mo, one of the things that we don't pay enough attention to is compaction. And so it's pretty interesting. You talk to the tile drainage guys, and they just finished splitting the tile on my home farm. We went from 50-foot centers down to 25-foot centers. Why does that happen? Why in 1972 did 50-foot centers work? And most of the tile guys are saying that we're not getting the lateral movement of that water, and they're blaming compaction. So if I'm out there and the soil is marginally fit and I'm pushing it, and particularly if I've got big equipment, without low pressure tires, and I know we've done a good job on low pressure tires, but yeah, compaction is a huge issue from that standpoint. There's some fields you go to where they ran duals with the planter, and that row in between the duals, she looks pretty tough because we just made it too tight.
Right on. Thanks, guys.
Okay.